Everyone's gone home already like 3 hours ago, so it's dead as dead. And everything is discounted because like it's not out of date, but they've just got to get rid of it because it's gone, yeah, okay, what's discounted? Great, that's dinner tonight.
Another mentor of mine, I'll spare his last name, but Bruce, a mutual friend of ours, he always said to me, Mitch, don't let your ego get ahead of you.
I guess to most people you'd be a professional at something, and I thought that was it, but in actual fact it's not.
So I always saved 83% of my income. That was always the rule that I worked off. And once again, commission, so income fluctuates. That meant that if I had a really good month, that there was more savings, but there was also more money to spend. And the same would be true for a negative month.
This week we're looking at the 5 money habits that have changed our lives, whether that's for me, whether that's Mitch. You're going to hear personally the experiences that we've had and how it's come to shape us. There's a lot to take out of this.
Saving number one, I mean, that's the building block to everything, right? Is learning how to save.
I've never made a withdrawal from that. The first time I made a withdrawal from that account was when I bought my first house in London.
Really?
And I always remember, and this sounds so pikey, and I've got no shame because it's part of the reason I'm a multi-millionaire now, is... Hey guys, welcome to this week's Money and Investing Show. This week we're looking at the 5 money habits that have changed our lives, whether that's for me, whether that's Mitch. You're going to hear personally the experiences that we've had and how it's come to shape us. There's a lot to take out of this. It's very personal. Make sure you take plenty of notes, but most importantly, make sure you take plenty of action. Hey guys, welcome to this week's Money and Investing Show with me, your host, Andrew Baxter, and as always, my offsider and co-host, Mitchell Olarenshaw.
Certainly upstage today, Mr. B, looking very, very dapper there. What's dressing for the occasion, I see?
Oh, look sharp, mate. Got to raise it every now and then.
Very nice. Well, looking good, and in that respect, we're going to talk about other habits other than just dressing well. Today we're going to keep this one nice and light and fun, but I hope that our listeners will take a lot of wisdom out of this because we're going to talk about the 5 money habits that changed our lives. So you'll go through 5, I'll go through 5, and maybe we can reach a mutual conclusion.
Okay, well, it's going to be fun, and it's going to be a bit of an archaeological dig in terms of going back through some of the key things. But you know, even if in my case they're a few decades ago, they're the building blocks that worked for me then, and they're the building blocks that will work for anybody today, as they do for you too, I'm sure.
Yeah, and I think for our listeners out there, the difference in perspective is really important here. You're quite a bit older than me, so you've got decades and decades of experience. I'm relatively fresh into the money game. So seeing it from both sides as the landscape changes for each of us, I'm sure, though, there'll be undertones which are quite similar for both.
Do you know what? I reckon the only thing that'll change is the colour of the box. The actual stuff in it will be more or less the same. So I'll give you my first one.
All right,
and I can thank my parents for this, and that's being a good saver. I've always been a good saver. And I remember when I was a kid, we went into the building society, Abbey National Building Society, which happened to be one of my early, very profitable trades. I'd paid my way through uni with shares in that company, and set up a savings account. And then any money I got from doing chores and bits and pieces around the house or part-time work or anything like that went straight into that savings account, and you watch interest grow, and you're watching your money work for you, albeit at a snail's pace. But as a kid, it's just this marvelous thing where it's like, wow, and not making a withdrawal from it.
Yeah. Okay. So saving number one, I mean, that's the building block to everything, right? Is learning how to save. Has there ever been a turning...
And I said I'd never made a withdrawal from that. The first time I made a withdrawal from that account was when I bought my first house in London.
Really?
Yep, did not take a cracker out of it. Just saved.
What was the rules you had around that? Anything in particular?
No, I had a few summer jobs. I had a couple of sidelines, which we've talked about in previous podcasts, of course, side hustles.
Baker, trader, student.
Making birthday cakes on the side.
That's right.
During my summers at uni, I always managed to lock down some okay paying work. I did some labouring for a while, worked in warehouses, worked for an insurance company, anything I could. And the insurance company I worked for, I got taken under my wing. This is the importance of mentorship by a couple of the old dudes. They said, listen, son, slow down. We don't do anything fast here because then we get a couple of hours overtime, about an hour and a half every day, Monday through Wednesday, Thursday sometimes, never on Friday, so we can get out of here. And make sure you play the game. And it was like, okay. And so I participated in that and picked up my overtime. And what I worked out was that because the overtime was at, I don't know, it would have been time and a half. It was actually quite a well-paying job at the time too, but it was maybe time and a half. So I had like this 4 hours or 6 hours at time and a half. And that would be my spending money for the week. And I'd save the actual wage that I was earning. So
nice.
Just bang it in there. And you could have flipped it and done the other way around. But
that's a good way to do it, though.
And so, yeah, that was a good one. Just that hardcore, just save it.
So the bulk of your income was saved, and then anything you did extra on top of the normal work you would normally do, you got to spend money on yourself. Right. That's great. That's a great rule. And that served you pretty well because then you save, you build up a cash, and then you can use the cash to invest, right?
That's exactly right. And by the time I came to get my first property, that stretched me for sure.
Yep.
Really did stretch me. London's never a cheap place to buy. That was the first time I made a withdrawal from that account, was the deposit for my house. And, there you go.
Very nice. I'll give you my first habit that changed my life, and I remember the turning point for it. I think when you start earlier on in your journey, you're at university, then your first full-time job, you've probably got stuff going in and out from everywhere. And I think a lot of people get caught up in just not understanding what's coming in and out of their accounts. The big thing for me was, I remember one particular day I sat down and I said, hold on. I'm actually going to take this seriously now because I want to buy a house. And that I was probably 19 or 20 when this happened. Just finished uni, started working here full time. And it's like, okay, what have I actually got coming in versus what have I got going out? And that may seem so simple, but so many people don't even realize you've got something coming from there, subscription from there. Actually knowing my numbers is probably the big habit.
It's pivotal, and it may sound basic because it is, but it is so important. It's one of those examples of world-class basics that you have to get right. And if you transpose that from personal finance into business, most businesses fail within the first 5 years, and part of the reason for that is just a lack of understanding of the numbers within the business. If you're someone that has a particular skill, it could be anything. It could be trade, could be someone that shapes surfboards or anything in between. When money comes in, you go, oh, great, there's money coming in, that's my income. But as we all know in business, it's not, because there's a lot of stuff that goes out. So in just the same way, if you don't understand your numbers in business, that's where the cash flow problems start to happen. And before long, things go spiraling out of control. So it's such a pivotal understanding to have on a personal finance level, and obviously as you move through in business and then into the world of investing too.
100%. And I treated it like a diet plan or a training regime. I grew up playing elite sport where everything was kind of laid out every week in advance for the season or pre-season or whatever it was. And you could do the same thing with your money. You know exactly what's coming up, bills, insurances, whatever it might be. You know what you spend every week or every month, and you know what's coming in. If you're on a commission roll like what I am, that becomes a little harder because things deviate and go up and down. But as long as you know what you're...
Or up and up in your case.
Up and up and up. You know what's going out. You know that everything left over, you can then allocate accordingly, which was a big change for me.
It's absolutely crucial, and it is one of the single most important life skills to have, and yet it's something that's missing for so many people. And in the same way, if you translate that across to investing, so investments should pay for themselves. It's as simple as that. And there's talk, get your tax down, get a negatively geared property, so you can get the tax benefits. But if the investment doesn't stack up in its own right, if the income isn't sufficient to justify holding the asset, it's probably either massively overvalued or it's not a decent cash generating tool. And just because there's a tax benefit currently, which could of course change, that's not a reason to earn something. You shouldn't focus on investments like that. You've got to have stuff that carry their own weight. And and again, if you look at business in just the same way, and that's the philosophy that we have here, every part of the business has to carry its own weight on its own 2 feet. It has to run itself cash flow wise, otherwise it's not going to happen. And those sort of hard and fast lessons are how you stay on the right side of the ledger. You're not depleting things, because unfortunately there will every now and then be things that come across and derail you, and you might need to dip into your savings or emergency fund or whatever it may be. But at least you got that fund there, and the only way you get that is to be massively disciplined by knowing your numbers and being pretty robust on the savings side for sure.
Very nice. What's number 2 for you?
It's a bit of a different one, left field one actually. Okay. So this would be when I moved to Australia. Actually, I was 29. I'd had a very successful career in the city. I was very good at what I did in terms of the skill set that I had. So I guess to most people, you'd be a professional at something. You're professional at investing, you're very good at it. And I thought that was it. But in actual fact, it's not. And I didn't really know a lot about structuring at that particular point in time. And I picked up a book, and I remember reading it on the plane, which was Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. And it's ironic that, we've come to work alongside Robert now for, 2 decades almost now, helping his people use the strategy we call cash flow on demand to get their income coming along. And it was a real game changer for me, because I'd grown up in an environment where both of my parents were pay-as-you-go employees. And my dad did some sideline stuff, but by and large, they were pay-as-you-go employees. And I'd never really had exposure, even in my professional capacity as a trader. That was just the lane I was in for a big institution. I was really paid. I was very well paid, but I was a paid employee, so to speak. And that notion of looking outside of structures and how that can then impact on tax, and the fact that, in an ideal world, if you go through sort of Kiyosaki's stuff, is that, all your expenses are pre-tax as opposed to post-tax, and the difference that can then make if you've got yourself structured, in an efficient way. So that to me was revolutionary, and I think, within our book, The Wealth Playbook, we talk about that quite extensively. Get yourself structured as effectively and as legitimately as you possibly can. Work that structure well, and it's going to set you up in very good stead, both from an asset protection perspective, but also then in terms of a tax payable perspective. And be very, very clear on this. This isn't about cutting corners or trying to hoodwink the ATO. This is about staying within the guidelines that are there, but those guidelines are there to be used.
That's right.
And it's massive.
You've got to use every tool available to you in the toolbox. Otherwise, you're not going to build the best house, right? And I think it's the only way to play the game, particularly for entrepreneurs and people who are in that commission role or ABN or whatever it might be, right?
Oh, it's you just have to. We've got people obviously that can now help client-based people in our ecosystem on advice on structuring and so on and so forth. But yeah, that was a huge game changer. So I've never seen the world as a pay-as-you-go employee.
Yep, very nice. Okay, number 2 for me, similar to your one, but it was something I've actually copped a bit of controversy for on this podcast before, but got no shame in saying it. So I always saved, particularly early days, 83% of my income. That was always the rule that I worked off. And once again, commission, so income fluctuates. That meant that if I had a really good month, that there was more savings, but there was also more money to spend. And the same would be true for a negative month. I always knew that with that rule, I'd have enough money to live, particularly early days when I lived at home, for sure. All it meant is that a very small part of that was left for me. And that meant I could get everything I wanted investing-wise done very early on. And I was able to then use time as my ally, and will continue to do so as I get older.
That's really interesting, particularly for your generation. I mean, for mine, the notion of not spending so much. So I mentioned before that I'd used my savings to buy my house, and I'm not going to say I overextended myself, but I did. I went pretty hard on that. Yeah. I bought the best property I could afford at that stage of my career. In the early days of my career, I wasn't earning a huge amount of money, but in my first transaction. So in the same way, there wasn't a lot of spare cash left over once you've serviced a mortgage and the general cost of living of being in London. So, some of the things that you do to sort of tighten the belt, if you look at it through that lens, don't have to be if it's a game. And it's that mental thing. And I see this with my kids now. It's turning the mundane into fun and so on. So I always used to make sure that I trained after work. I'd have a shower at the gym, and that was good practice to save having a shower at home. And British Gas used to charge like a wounded bull for doing that.
That is tight. That's nice.
And at the same time, finishing work at market shut at 4, but I'd go and have a train for a couple of hours, sauna, shower. And then I'd go out and get my dinner, what I was going to have for dinner. And I always remember, and this sounds so pikey, and I've got no shame in really saying this, because it's part of the reason I'm a multi-millionaire now, is I would go to the Tesco Metro, which is like the little supermarket, like Coles Express type thing, in the city, because that's where the gym was. It was just across the road. Like the Futures Exchange was just near Bank Station, so Bank of England around there. So there's a Tesco's Metro there. So I'd go in there on the way home. And because everyone's gone home already like 3 hours ago, so it's dead as dead. And everything is discounted because it's not out of date, but they've just got to get rid of it because it's gone. You go, okay, what's discounted? Great, that's dinner tonight, basically. And so I'd save myself a little bit of money that way as well. And then I'd get on the tube and go home and cook my dinner and wash and repeat the next day. And I have no shame in saying that, because
you had to hustle.
It's smart.
What it is.
It's just smart, and it's the foundation blocks, I suppose. I don't do that so much. No, funny enough, I still take the kids to LD.
Oh, that's still a thing.
Yeah, on a Saturday, and which is great, because they're enjoying. They enjoy spending time with you as a parent, whatever it is you're doing, whether it's a chore, whether it's something else. But learning about value of money is really hard in my household. We're in an abundant household. There is plenty of cash there. And my wife and I had this conversation just when we were in Italy a few weeks ago. We've got to be really careful about the expectations that we're creating on our kids. And I got the best photo the other day. So my third child, Bella, she's in the back of my Rolls Royce reading the Aldi catalogue, looking at the specials with the pen going like this. And it's just the juxtaposition of the photograph. It just made me laugh because, on one side you've got like an excessively expensive vehicle, tax deductible I might add. And then on the other side, you've got my 6-year-old going, that's really good value. We should look at that in this sort of bubble. And it's just such a contrasting picture. And I think back to, like I said, my time in London, and that was in the early days. It changed as I made more money a little bit, not a lot, but it changed a little bit. That you're in this environment where there's so much money being made and there's so much money being frittered away as well. And just by looking through the right lens of not being miserly, but just being smart and saving your cash can put you into a great position. And that's why I ended up with my first, second, third, fourth, fifth, 10th property.
Yeah. I remember you said to me early days, it's not about what you make, it's what you get to keep. And it's true, because no matter how much you earn or how little you earn, you can still spend it all.
Too right. And it's looking at ways of slipstreaming, I suppose. If you've got the ability to slipstream and give yourself less friction to move ahead. And in my early days, and my wife would probably argue that this may still be the case now, I was extremely money orientated because I had none when I was a kid and I wanted it. And so everything I did was focused on making, conserving, saving, growing. And that was just my absolute definite major purpose, if I can choose a line from Napoleon Hill. And as I became more established in my career, I found different ways of playing that too. So all of a sudden you start to get invited to a lot of lunches or dinners. So all of a sudden you're not buying dinner anymore or lunch anymore. You're going out and you're getting it from people that you're doing business with and all sorts of things like that too. So almost your work life becomes your social life on somebody else's expense account. It's fantastic.
Happy days. Very nice. Okay, number 3.
Go on, what's yours? No, we've got to go back.
No, that's my second one.
You've had 2 already?
Yeah, we've both had 2.
No way. This
so
is
you've had saving and structuring.
I'm losing track of this.
I've had saving as well as knowing my numbers. So we're up to number 3.
Okay.
What's your third?
Number 3, I think lifestyle inflation. And I know it's going to be one for you too.
That was my third one too.
Okay.
We'll share this one.
And I think we cut from the same cloth as far as that's concerned. For a number of reasons. It's so easy as the pot grows to become, you can, and it's not about being miserly again, but at the same time, you've just got to really keep tab on what you're doing. We've talked about socks as the benchmark for that. It's just a really simple example.
What are you wearing?
Yeah, exactly.
You go Boss today.
Yeah, I think these ones are Boss today too.
There we go.
I did
cut from the same cloth, literally.
Literally, yeah. I got some nice Xenu ones while I was in Europe, but they didn't make the cut today. In fact, I've noticed that housekeeper now, when she's doing the washing, my son's got all my nice socks. He's going, these are really comfortable, and he's running around playing soccer. Am I trying to buck Xenu socks? It's like, yeah, nice. But I think that's something that you do have to try and keep a lid on, and there's nothing wrong with having colour in life too. You got to let that happen, otherwise what's the point? You could be but it just depends on the game that you're playing. But I think lifestyle inflation is a really tricky one, and I've just seen that firsthand. So I've just been in Europe for 5 weeks. I've got 8 kids or 6 kids, and my wife and I sitting at the front. I've got my nanny sitting on the plane as well. So you got 9 airfares. You go out for dinner, everywhere you go is times 9, and the whole thing blows out really quickly. And then at the same time, I had a chuckle to myself going, how blessed am I that I'm in a position that I can give my kids this experience too. Yeah. And that's not at the expense of being behind with a mortgage. I have one of them, and all that sort of stuff, because you've already taken care of business earlier on. And you mentioned I'm a couple of decades age-wise ahead of where you are, and the hard work I did when I was at your age and the path that I trod that you're walking right now is the reason why I'm able to do that. And it's just by that consistency of effort. That's enough on lifestyle inflation for me. What's your take on that?
Yeah, it's the same thing. Another mentor of mine, I'll spare his last name, but Bruce, a mutual friend of ours, he always said to me, Mitch, don't let your ego get ahead of you. And this was early days. And he was telling me a couple of stories about how early days he wanted to do bigger and better things in cars and that kind of thing, but had to rein it back. And the idea is that you give up something now for something better in the future. That's always the trade-off that you're making. I think lifestyle inflation, like I talk about the fact that I always set that rule of I live off 17% of my income, 83% gets saved. I pretty much do the exact same thing now. It's just a bigger denominator as time goes on and on.
But it's a habit, right? It's a callous muscle memory that you've built over that period of time.
That's it. And if you keep things the same in due time as you earn more or get more promotions as an employee, whatever it is, you will eventually have more.
Do you feel, and this is an interesting one, do you feel that you're compromising the quality of life by doing that or not?
In my situation, no, for two reasons. I've been able to grow my income, firstly, so that denominator has gotten bigger. But secondly, I've probably relaxed, admittedly, a little bit myself the last 2 years. I had two big holidays.
You've had some splurge, which you've more than earned, and that's really important to understand. It's just because there'll be people that are watching this going, oh, look at these two miserable maggots there that don't do anything and enjoy any level of colour.
We both just got back from Europe.
Well, so, we just had 5 weeks over there. Yeah, I had a really nice €2,000 bottle of wine over dinner at the weekend, which is nice. So, I mean, you do have a splurge. I like wine, so that's fair enough. But I think there's a good example of lifestyle inflation, but special occasion, so it's okay.
Yeah, it's all relative, right?
And I think, it's the reason I asked the question, do you feel like you're compromising your life? Because this whole thing is a mindset. And you can look through a lens where you're having or experiencing less and it feels like something's been taken away from you. Or you can look through a lens where you go, actually, no, I've got total control of this and I'm choosing this. And there's a difference between having to do something and getting to do something. There's a difference between having something taken away and choosing to have something. It's a really significant and important mindset shift. And I want to pause on this for a moment because I think it's such a breakthrough for people if you are able to push through that. So you mentioned about Bruce, and you're right, we both know Bruce well. And I remember him driving around in the Corolla, which is laughable.
Still has it.
Yeah, which is laughable, but that's what he goes to do his business in, because that doesn't pre-frame his overall wealth position as well as the other litany of cars in his garage probably do. That's a game he's playing, and playing it at an extremely high level, and has been very, very successful at it. And that's the thing. When this sounds like it's hard, like having a cold shower or getting up earlier or whatever it may be, that might sound hard unless it's something you're deciding to do through choice, in which case it's almost a reward. If you go into the world of Dave Goggins, and I know we've spoken extensively about this, it's embracing the pain, and the pain is the goal. And then the outcome is actually the byproduct of it. Yeah. Whereas most people see it the other way around. They see the other thing is the goal, and the pain is the price you've got to pay. And it makes it very hard because it's a hefty price to pay. Yeah. Whereas if you turn that into the mind game, and I'm really minded, I've talked to this previously, I did get into a lifestyle inflation cycle for a period of time, a number of years ago, and it was the most hedonistic point in my life from a bachelor perspective, and I was doing a lot of stuff. And a buddy of mine was flying back from the US. We'd been over there, as we were, about once a month, going over to the Playboy Mansion, in Beverly Hills, and partying and everything else that goes alongside that. Lots of fun, some great stories and all the rest of it. And we're sat on the flight on the way back, so we had 4 or 5 days off work, probably a bit dusty when you get back to Australia. You sat at the front of the plane, so there's another 15, 18 grand. You've had some nice accommodation, you've been somewhere in town, whether it's the Roosevelt or wherever it might be, so you've dropped some cash on that. And we're about 3 or 4 trips in, and we're about the same age. And we actually used to date 2 sisters. That's how we actually met each other. And,
wow.
We're chatting away, and I remember saying to him, I said, how you going? He said, yeah, good. I said, what do you reckon about the weekend? I said, it's great fun, wasn't it? He said, yeah, good fun. I said, but pretty punchy. And we're both in a position you can afford it. And he's like, I reckon we have a new game. And it was his idea initially, and then we just took it to the next level. I said, let's see if we can go on, because we've been on this splurge now for a long time. Don't get me wrong, great fun. Let's see if we can go the other way and just let's play the game. If here's the deal, if we're going to spend more than $200 on something that's not a business related expense, call each other.
Yeah.
We didn't spend anything. I literally did not spend anything. Didn't have to call for sort of higher authority sign off. And it became a game. And it really did become a game. And you go, you catch up at the weekend, how'd you go? Oh, great. And anyone listening to this go, that doesn't sound much fun. It's because it hasn't clicked for you yet. That you are totally in control of the feelings that you have around the pathway, the journey you're on with money, with anything. And if you choose to play a game where lifestyle inflation is something you're going to pull back and go almost the entire opposite way, you can enjoy playing that game and get just as much fun from it. I still do from time to time. I still splurge. I just told you about my wine at the weekend. I'm always feeling guilty because it should have been cellared for another year or two, I think. But
I'm sure it tasted good.
But you know, that's an interesting space, and it is a huge mindset shift. So when I ask you, like, do you feel like you're compromising your life? You're not, because you're choosing the path you're on.
Yeah, I'd offer one last piece of advice to anyone listening to this in this space is be prepared to segregate in areas of your life for this. An example I'll use, for example, is health. For me, I've definitely had inflation when it comes to health, which sounds crazy.
Yeah, but it's also your highest priority in life.
Highest priority in life. I am prepared to go to the best grocery store, Ferry Road or Harris Farms or whatever here on the Gold Coast to buy better quality produce than I am at Woolworths. It cost me double, but I am prepared. And that's an inflation thing, but also see it as a recycling method, because that comes back to me in spades. And there's certain things that I'll compromise on and others that I definitely will not.
And this comes back to values, which more than any single thing shape who we are as a person. And if you've got a really strong value frame and you know what's important to you, then those decisions become very, very easy. And it's not a budget buster. It's really, I guess, conscious. You know, I mentioned I go to Aldi, get some of the specials. I also have a farm that produces organic food, so I don't have to buy, you know what I mean? So I agree. You've got to find your lane and fight the battles that are important to you.
Very nice. Number 4.
Yeah,
what do you got?
I think in terms of around the money space, security, I've gone from being quite an aggressive investor. As I've gotten older, I've become significantly more conservative. And for me, the motivation has shifted in a number of levels. Number one, when I was a bachelor and a single person, if it all blew up, what does it matter?
Yeah.
Got time over again, you can go again. Now, as a husband and a father of 6 incredible kids, I have a responsibility to be the provider and make sure that my family, irrespective of what can happen, are secure and provided for. And I think that's I'm not going to say a value shift, because maybe I was providing for myself in a different lens. But for me, that's the frame I look through for pretty much every business decision I make now. And certainly every investment decision is, okay, what's the benefit to my tribe? And is it in a way that's safe and secure, that's either sustainable, or there's no tsunami of problems that sits behind that?
Yeah.
And so that's a different frame of reference for a lot of decisions. And I know that's more of a value thing, but yeah, that's where the lens has really changed from a money perspective for me now.
That's interesting, because I think probably like when you were young, like me, at one point, you'd think, I just want to rev this as hard as possible 100%. And become as wealthy as possible and have 10 cars and 50 watches and whatever. Then you realize that you'd be probably working forever with heaps of debt if you wanted to do that, whereas you dial it back and go, what do I actually want? Interesting.
Debt-free, no ramifications, asset protection in play, and
you're impervious to everything, no matter what happens.
You can be, yeah. And I'm not going to say it's taken a while to get to that. I think there's a maturation in this, and I'll give you the antithesis of this. I saw someone who I don't really know. I know them through somebody else who became a father a while ago, and is just on this course on manning up. And I don't know if you can do a course on manning up. You either are or you're not. It's one of those.
Yeah, you got to kind of work that out yourself, right?
Attributes, and I think, yeah, as when you click across and become a father for the first time, that's probably. And if you did a straw poll, I'd be really interested in the comments actually. If you were a dad, and there's no gender bias in this, mums and dads. If you're a single parent, then you're in both chairs, I suppose. But as a man, and I can only speak to that as a man. The change that you see the world through after you become a father shifts immeasurably through a really different lens that I've just explained. And I'll be really interested in the comments if you've had that experience or understand or agree with it, or maybe you don't. Put it in the comments. It'd be really interesting to see. So this character's gone and done his how to man up kind of course, which is a bit of an oxymoron, as I say in the first instance. And he's been on this sort of travel journey where, hey, we're over here in this part of the world. Again, it's our place we like to go to. Not a cheap place to go. Been there, it's nice. Wouldn't keep going back there, but that's everyone's journey. Sort of having some fun and indulging his need for that, but they don't own a house. And it's like, well, how can you provide for your family when there's not even a roof over their head?
Yeah, I
your
don't like
needs
that.
of needing to tick your box for whatever reason it might be, whether it's social media related or a validation thing, or I don't know what the motivation. Don't know the person enough to talk to them, and I've got no real interest in talking to them. But it's an interesting litmus test that you've become a dad, yet you're clowning around, spending your dough doing all this stuff, and you haven't provided. Maybe I'm a bit too conventional. I don't know.
No, I mean, once again, it comes down to values and priorities. I think people value some of that stuff more than they value owning a house. I've got a friend who plays in the NFL that has every watch known to man and every diamond chain, but doesn't own a house either. And you think, that's just so backwards of how I would probably play it.
Depends on his watches, because they can go really well.
Patek, he's got everything.
There you go. So if you're in the right lane with it, that's a different type of
It's
more
good
liquid
investment.
investment. We can justify anything. There's a softener in there somewhere. But yeah, I guess everyone's on their own journey, and if it's your journey, that's fine. But again, maybe I'm wearing a bit more of a traditionalist, giving a couple of generations of or decades of age away here. Maybe that value system is more conservative in the way that I see things. That a house is out of reach, so let's not worry about it, and let's just have a good time anyway. I just can't get my head around that, and it's one of the most basic things to get squared away is get your tribe looked after, because if something happened to you and you're taken out of it, the only legacy that matters is not money. The legacy that matters is the kids you have, the values you've given them, and the journey that you can start to give them in life. And if you were to hop off the perch, heaven forbid, and you haven't got them, I'm not talking about set up where they've got houses and all that sort of stuff, but you've got a firm foundation where they can securely get a good education and not have to worry about food coming in and things like that, so they can grow and thrive in this next generation. That really is the most important thing. You post on Instagram. Well, Instagram probably won't even exist by then. You know what I mean? It's just very strange. I don't understand that.
Got you. I'll go my number 4. I think it kind of intertwines with yours a little bit. Probably the biggest thing that changed, one of the massive habits that changed my success would be setting goals, which is really silly and really easy. But you think, okay, that if I don't set a goal, then what am I actually trying to do? And that's savings goals, investing goals. And once again, I think I had a massive shift in priorities, similar to yourself, but in a different way. I guess I took the approach of, do I need 100 million and 10 cars by the time I die? Probably not. Or because in that sense, I'll probably be stuck at my desk for the rest of my life. Or do I want to live a good life that's debt-free and all those things? So I think my goals around that definitely changed.
Goals, well, here we go. I mean, we'll be doing a session on this at the back end of the year, I'm sure, for the 7th year in a row.
Always our best ranking episode,
Any road will take you nowhere. You've got to have a level of clarity. Ironically, my 5th was goal, so I'm now buying myself some time to think about what I'm going to go with here. I think you have to be really, really clear on what you want, and more importantly, what you want, why you want it. Because if you don't understand why you want it, it becomes very hollow. It's just something that's written down. You can't buy into it. But when you've got a deep down understanding of what those things are, and coming to the realization that there's a trade-off between time and money in some instance, where you can get to a level that gives you everything you want. That's not throwing that's not throwing the towel in and going, I can't be bothered to chase that. It's just like, I can get to a level that is where I want to be, and then I want to, while I'm doing that, I want to enjoy the journey, and that's it for me. I'm not interested in having a stroke or an aneurysm at work where I'm chasing this huge debt that I'm running down.
Correct,
and getting on there. So I think, that's really important. You have to have clarity on what you're aiming for.
That's right.
Otherwise, you're snookered.
All right, number 5, last but not least, what have you got?
I think having a level of flexibility in what you do. I think, if I can sort of augment this on goals, which was sort of my 5th too, and I'll try and pivot off this a little bit. I think you've got to be very clear on what you want, but you've got to be extremely flexible on how you get there, because life is not a straight line. There are many, many things that can come along as a setback, whether it's health, whether it's job security, whether it's global events. You're about to retire and the GFC happens, for example, or whatever it may be. So you've got to have a level of flexibility in there. And I think also you've got to recognize that at different stages of life, those things flex and change, whereby you might go, I'm actually going to overshoot what I wanted, or I'm going to undershoot and I need to correct my activity to get there. So, if you talk about property, for example, we've had this conversation a few times, adding a few more properties to, it sounds really, casual off the hip, a few more properties, but adding another investment property or a 3rd or a 4th or a 5th one to a portfolio or more than that was the goal. And then when you actually look at the numbers and you go, it's
a bit expensive.
It's expensive. The yield is paper thin. Bit of a shakier outlook for the economy, political uncertainty, maybe some tax changes. Maybe if I get my personal position under control, where I'm in a debt-free environment, personal place of residence. This is an example of flex on your part, which is really smart, and it's a recognition that, okay, I was going to aim for this, but maybe that wasn't the right thing to aim at. And there's a level of humility that comes within that. As I say, you got to be resolute on what you want, but you got to be very flexible. And changing pathway and being flexible in there is not easy, especially if you've a peer group that aren't supportive. If you got a group, I thought you were going for this, you've given up on that. No, I haven't. I don't give up on anything. I've just changed what my priority is for the following reasons. And there's a rational explanation as opposed to an emotional explanation for it. You go, okay, that kind of makes sense. And I guess, intertwined with what I've just said about being flexible is the importance of having people in your universe, people that are around you that understand and are similar and supportive of what you're doing. So if you do change tack, they don't give you a rev about it. They go, that's probably the right thing to do. Well done, because of X, Y, and Z. And that, more than anything, I think keeps you on point to where you need to be in life. So I think the last thing on there would be a peer group of sorts of like-minded people. And I've found that quite hard as an only child. As a CEO, I'm not going to say it's all lonely and you can all send me your support over the email, but it is quite an isolated kind of position to be in. And then if you start to endure a level of success, the people that you want to be around are probably quite different, and they're probably quite like you, where they're reasonably guarded. I moved, I live down in Byron, and as you know, and it's taken quite a long time to work out who our tribe is down there in terms of, I've got 2 or 3 mates now that are in business or have been in business that are a good sort of mastermind alliance of people you can have a chat with and say, hey, I'm thinking this, what do you reckon about that? And you're dealing with people that are on a level, I don't mean necessarily financially or intellectually, but are on the same wavelength in terms of where they're looking to go, or the importance they understand of that bouncing ideas off of people in a peer group. So there's a bit of a flex out of goals, but into that notion of having a supportive network to back up on your flexibility, I think is absolutely critical. And I think earlier on I was quite guarded about that. I was quite a loner. Even when I was on the speaking circuit, you get a whole bunch of speakers and you're all, let's go and hang out. And most of them are broke. They're just seminar to seminar broke. They've got no business on the back end, and they all talk it up, but there's nothing that's really there. It's not the best group of people to hang out with. And that was a little bit of a chunk of my time for probably 7 or 8 years in that sort of peer group. And it's nice to be out of that. Very nice. I like that one. Number 5 for you. Number 5, don't negotiate with myself. Mm-hmm. Can I say this in 2 ways? Because I know that sounds really brutally strict. When you set goals or habits for yourself, I'm going to save X or invest Y or whatever it might be, you have to do that unemotionally. So you sit down, you write your goals. And usually that's in a quiet room on your own and you know exactly what you're doing. Then you go to Pacific Fair at the weekend and something pops up and you get really emotional about it. And you go, I want that, I want that, I want that. And then you buy it. I always worked on the premise of, okay, if I can detach myself from the emotion of spending or not, then I would make better quality decisions. So I set the rules, I set the goals. If the goals are achieved, then there's a reward paid. And it might be, okay, you hit your goal, go and spend $1,000 on whatever you want. I'll then take that money and I'll go and spend every cent of it and have fun. I'm really pleased to finally hear those words, because I know how regimented you are on yourself. Yeah. And for anyone listening, we've worked together for a long time now, and we've got to know each other outside of work too. And I know how strict you are on yourself. How many spoonfuls of Nutella do you have for your birthday? 2, just the 2. Didn't go a third, right? No. Big treat. All right. So I know how strict you are on those things, but both of us have struggled on the reward side of things. And it's good to hear that you've made inroads into that, because you have to have some level of colour. And it might sound, again, for people that, and I can't imagine anyone that's cynical has sat through this interview, they'd have clocked off ages ago and they're not listening to us now. But some people would say, even your rewards are measured. How spontaneous is that? It can't be good. But I think you've got to have that relationship between activity or outcome and then rewarding yourself with something. But it's got to be contained, because it can run out of control.
That's right. Life without color is a boring life. But I think detaching yourself from the emotion necessarily of the color is probably where it worked out best. So I'll give you another example, and this can be used in monetary terms, but I use it a lot in exercise. It was terrible weather on the Gold Coast a couple of weeks ago, and I was doing a 15K run on the treadmill. I hate running on the treadmill, bores me to tears, hurts my body. I got 10Ks in, and I said, okay, what I'll do is I'll just run 10, and then I'll do half an hour on the bike. And then I thought about it for a second. I said, hold on. I said I was going to do 15. Now I'm giving myself an out, and I'm negotiating with myself.
Yep.
So I said, okay, if you do that, you have to then go and run 10 kilometers tomorrow morning in the pouring wet rain. That's your punishment for it. If you want to stop now, that's your punishment. And I thought about it for a second. And I said, no, I'm going to do the 15. I did the 10 the next day anyway. All I'm saying is that you get into these points where you become emotional about things, and then you start to compromise on certain things you said.
Well, I think that, and this has been a really sort of chatty type of conversation today, and I think it's important because, what we're talking about here is that voice on your shoulder.
Coach or critic, right?
Yep. And you can be so brutally harsh on yourself in the cruelest and nastiest ways that you'd never speak to anybody else is the way you can speak to yourself, and that self-talk it is massively important when it comes to discipline and keeping your focus and holding true to your principles and values and the various things that have made up our 5 each list of things here. And learning how to turn that voice on your shoulder into a support that pulls you up when you're, just like you've just described, that pulls you up when you're about to baby yourself and giving yourself an out, but also rewards you and supports you in a nice way when you do the right thing, is crucial. And this isn't about schizophrenia or being nuts and hearing voices in your head. It's about that ability to self-manage and to self-care within yourself. How you treat yourself more than anything is crucially important. Do you beat yourself up when you make a mistake? Or do you go, okay, that was pretty silly. What can I learn from it? Or do you go, you idiot, don't do that. You idiot, I can't believe you've done that again. It's a similar thing, but they're very, very different in terms of one is a construct and one is a destruct.
Yeah. So,
if you wanted a sort of an outro for where we're at today, and this has been really interesting, as I say, it's probably been more chatty than we would normally operate with, is focus on one thing from this podcast today, and that is working on your self-talk and how you manage yourself. Do you build yourself up or do you tear yourself down? And if you make a blunder, that's good because at least you did something. The person that's done nothing or never made a mistake has never achieved or done anything. You are going to make mistakes on this journey, some doozies along the way. As long as the self-talk that you have is firm, don't baby yourself, is firm. So probably not the smartest thing you've just done there, but what can we learn from this so it doesn't happen again is probably about the most empowering conversation you can have versus you absolute fool, I can't believe you just did that again. Yep. And it probably would be again because you're in a pattern of that kind of poor behavior. So more than anything, work on that self-talk.
And that's it. That's a wrap. Thank you very much, AB.
My pleasure. Great chat. Cheers. If there are words or phrases in this podcast that you don't fully understand, or perhaps you're someone that's looking to generate strategies to help build your wealth, make sure you visit wealthplaybook.com.au and grab your copy of our latest best-selling book, which is absolutely jam-packed with strategies, techniques, and most importantly, checklists that will practically give you a guide to create tomorrow's wealth today.